All right. So I'm gonna get back into this. I had to take a short break there. Give me some crack. Part 2, owning rich.
Because I'm not going to sugarcoat a part of the case that shouldn't be sugarcoated. I believe that they were definitely rehearsed prior to going in and making those statements.
You think that Darlie and Darren had rehearsed statements, right? This is one of the things that makes you believe that Darlie is innocent, right? But they wrote those statements and she stuck by those statements all these years. And she hasn't changed that story except for the fact that there was a fight that night. So that's one of your other reasons. Okay.
I can just tell by the way they read. And
you can tell by the way those are coached because you were trained by the world's best investigators. Okay.
Again, I'm not trying to say that Darlie is guilty. I do not believe she is guilty, but I find that to be strange. But you also have to remember that
you find their statement strange. You find it strange that you feel like their statements were coached. That's what you just said. You find it strange that you feel like their statements were coached. These were statements they gave voluntarily, and nobody. You think that they wouldn't come back and say they coached me because when she had that interview with Bill Parker, he claimed she did. She said, "I don't know. Well, she spoke out about that. She said that's a lie. She said I did not say that. So why wouldn't they tell that they were coached? They talk about the whole justice system and if they feel strongly about Officer Waddell and they say how they feel, so how can they? Neither one of them said they were coached, Rich. And you said you feel it. You said they feel like they're coached. You said you feel like they were coached. How come they didn't feel that way? They never mentioned it. And you investigated deeply with some of the world's best investigators. That came out of your mouth, sir.
Some of the evidence does indicate that Darlie and Darren weren't exactly getting along very good at the time that those boys were murdered.
Some of the evidence, her fucking ring was off. She'd been sleeping on that couch for a week. Hear me? There's already a speculation that she would constantly tell Darren that she was going to divorce him. I mean, come on. What do you mean speculation? Did he say speculation? Come on, let's see what your big-ass investigation did for you, Rich.
But you also have to remember that some of the evidence does indicate that Darlie and Darren weren't exactly getting along very good at the time.
So that's a big far cry from give me a kiss and dream about me. And he went upstairs and went to sleep. And when she's worried about all them sex toys, I will not apologize for loving my husband.
That those boys were murdered. And
because they said
in light of that,
they said there was no turmoil.
That I think maybe, that's why they weren't really straight up with a lot of that stuff right from the get, because they're afraid that they implement it.
He literally just said the reason that they didn't put it in their first written affidavits. First, he tried to say they were coached. If they were coached, it would have swung the way the police wanted it to go. Do that. And nobody spoke up about it. Then I'm going to go back and be sure exactly what he says here before I comment.
In light of that, I think maybe, that's why they weren't really straight up with a lot of that stuff right from the get, because they're afraid that they implement it.
He basically is telling us the reason they left it out, that they were having words about the yacht and that she had asked him for a separation that night, is because they were afraid they would be implemented. Well, Rich, they would be. They would be implemented. Because if you have a marriage that's been together for 9 years, 7 or 8, I think it was 9 years, and it comes to a head where somebody's going to leave that marriage, and it was a heated argument, sort of, in a way, I think that Darren finally got tired of her threatening to divorce him, and that she did that night. She'd been down on that couch for a week, and you don't go into very much why she'd been down there. It's not reasonable for her to claim that the baby would wake her up moving. Not reasonable. If he did wake her up moving, and he was doing that quite a bit, then she should be picking him up and rocking him back to sleep, changing his diaper, giving him a warm blanket, sitting there with him until he goes to sleep. Instead of just avoiding the situation and saying, fuck that baby, I'm going way down here on the couch. And have you seen how long that bedroom was that they had? The baby's crib was up way on the other side. Didn't wake nobody else up. Nobody, Darlie. Wow. Of course, you're absolutely correct. They were afraid they'd be implemented because they knew they would. And it would make sense to everybody.
Darren, on the other hand, I think Darren's a very intelligent man. I don't know Darren. I mean, I know he lives in Lubbock.
And now in episode 20, he's talking to people that know Darren personally.
I actually even have his phone number, but I don't bother him. I don't think he wants to be bothered, and I'm not going to bother him.
Well, you did say you wrote him a really long, thoughtful letter after that, and he didn't respond to you. This be off. I believe it hurt your feet a little bit. I guess I'm some kind of celebrity now because he told me to fuck off once as a supporter. And he flashed off this big old Ford F-150 Harley Davidson edition truck. Beautiful. Brand new Harley right next to it. Woo-hoo! I said, Mama, darling, come take a look at this shit right here. And she went and looked, but she didn't say nothing to him. I did. I said, hey, don't you think you should send some of that money to Darlie? You're trying to help with some of these testing that need to be done. And he told me, fuck off. And back then, I didn't used to record shit. I didn't really do videos as much. I didn't. Now when I talk about this, and somebody will say something and they lie, but now I got you. You know what I mean? But he's talking nicely about Darren. Let's see how it goes.
But if he probably knows who I am at this point, and if he ever wants to contact me, he's more than welcome to do so. I would love to chat with him.
He don't want to talk.
But he also don't have to. I'm not trying to contact family members and people that are victims of this horrible crime to upset them and hurt.
Well, you did say that you looked Beja up and you were thinking about going by her house. And the fact of the matter is she cared for those babies, but you were going to bother her. She's not a family member, but she's a victim of it. She suffers that they're gone, no matter who killed them. Beja suffers.
Them and bring it all back. And I mean, there are a few people that I've tried to get a hold of in this case, or that I was planning on getting a hold of, and I just couldn't bring myself to do it because I felt as though I was going to hurt. When I got a hold of Darlie Key, I mean, the first thing I told Darlie Key was,
did you tell her about your investigation?
If I say anything to upset you or bother you, please tell me and I'll stop. It's not what my plan is here. It's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do here is everything in my power to see to it that Darlie gets found innocent and exonerated of these horrible charges.
So now you're on 58 episodes in, I believe. You're showing autopsy photos and stuff like that, which is something that you're swearing here that you don't want to do. Even though you asked for permission, you shouldn't have asked for permission to do that. That in itself would be upsetting. Hey, Mama Darlie, I'd really like to show these.
Is that I know she did not commit. So again, tonight is just basically an introduction to this new podcast that I'm going to do every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. We'll go for 1 hour. I think that's definitely long enough. What I ask out of anybody that comes to the room over time, please do not come in here and start bashing and disrespecting. Of course, anybody can disagree with me that wants to disagree with me. I'm all about that. And, you know, I love a challenge, but I don't like insults.
Toby Shucks an idiot.
There is a whole lot of that in this case, and it's absolutely insanely ridiculous.
Well, where you see it at?
I couldn't believe the half of it when I saw it.
Hey, I tell you
And
what,
when I seen
don't believe the half of it.
Tyrone Foster, he's also known as Real World Podcasts, started a new podcast, and starting it the way that he's starting it, you know, all I can remember is telling Bonnie, I hope this guy knows what he's getting into.
Yeah, poor Tyrell. He's not around anymore talking about the case. You know, he wasn't interested in the case, Rich. I mean, it's obvious he hasn't talked about it since.
There are some very, very evil people on both sides of the aisle, whether it be on the support side or
Tell us about those evil supporters, Rich.
whether it be on the non-support side.
Woo!
The lies, the manipulation, and
where's it at?
It's really, really incredible. But it's imperative that when one looks at this case, they do their own work, their own research. Check it out for yourself, and be careful.
Well, why would we?
We
can hear from you. You were trained
accept
by the world.
Anybody has to say on the case without some type of proof of documentation,
right,
or some type of evidence supporting
you. You are literally contradicting yourself from the part one of this reaction, because everything that you said was not backed by anything. No documentations, no names, no nothing. You showed absolutely not a single file in this case, and you got one of those file case numbers wrong. You told us that you were trained by the world's best investigators. You keep calling her Routier. You know? Come on, Rich. This is what you're selling the public. We're checking it out. Let's see if we won't buy it.
their views. Don't take people's word for it. Not in this case.
Now, wait a minute. You said you talked to so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and they said they couldn't even ride their bike by there. And they said this. And they said that. And you're stating it as fact. So you're taking someone else's word for it. That's exactly what you're doing. You're telling everybody not to do what you've been doing. Literally.
I have found so many donut holes in this case. It's
You don't name none of them. You keep on saying how bad things were. Somebody even asked you a question. You didn't even come up with that. You have not named one single fact. You've been 49 minutes on here, and you haven't came with that smoking gun that's got you in there with them earphones on, talking to those people. You have not named it.
unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Ridiculous. So many.
But I've also had the pleasure of finding some things out on my own as well.
No, don't take anybody's word for it. Do your own research.
That I haven't heard from anybody else. It doesn't mean that it's not known, but I'm just saying I haven't heard it from anybody else. Not too much, but a little bit. And there's a couple very interesting things that I'm currently looking at on the case too that I'll definitely share at a later date. But anyway, we're getting down to the nitty gritty here of almost an hour. And I just want to kind of do a brief discussion tonight, not get into anything real deep just yet, but we're going to. And we're going to start doing that next Saturday. And what I can do is in the Free Darlie Facebook group is I will post a subject matter that we'll be discussing. And so hopefully people will come in and people will discuss it with me. Again, supporters and non-supporters are welcome here. Everybody has the right to their own opinion. I just don't want any horrible insults going on to anybody. Hi, Alvin. Okay, you say, Darlie, according to me and the state of Texas that made no mistakes, she is the killer. That night, her poured out all his anger on his children. Right. Let me ask you a question. You're saying he, right? Um, are you making the suggestion that Darren murdered those children? Alvin, is that your suggestion, or what is your suggestion? Or am I not reading this right? Darlie, according to me in the state of Texas that made no mistakes, she is the killer. That night, her poured out all his anger on his children. All right, I think I know what you're trying to say. I had to read that twice. I think the grammar is a little bit strange on that, but that's okay. Okay. I'm sorry you feel that way, but you have that right to feel that way. Okay, you're saying Darlie did it. So what you're trying to say is that the state of Texas, or the prosecution for this matter, made no mistakes in this case. That's what you're telling me?
Well, at that point in time, Darlie did not file for prosecutorial misconduct, so that would be the defense line of accusation that they did something wrong in the case. Darlie never filed that, so that's exactly what you're being told, and that's exactly what happened.
There was no errors in this case whatsoever? Okay, according to you. Okay, well, how well have you looked at the case? Have you read the trial transcripts?
First, now they don't like to do that. He's getting pissed off. Let's see.
That's great. I respect all opinions too. I'm not going to insult you or want to get nasty or anything like that, because things don't get solved that way. Things get solved through action, not stupidity.
Action.
And I'm glad you respect all opinions. I respect all opinions, and you have that right to feel that way if you feel that way. But I would kind of like to know why you feel that way, why you believe that the state of Texas made no mistakes. So the state of Texas made no mistakes.
No, there's no mistake.
I think for just at the get-go, on the transcripts, there was 33,000 mistakes on the transcript.
And the state's not responsible for any mistakes in the transcript. Actually, Sandra Halsey was, and she was held accountable for those mistakes. So that's not the state of Texas. No, sir. They fixed it. The state of Texas fixed it.
Done by the stenographer at the trial. I think that in itself is horrible. And what about the lead detective in the case that pled the fifth?
Oh, yeah. There we go. You come a long way, Rich, because that ain't shit.
Now, in my opinion, and I told Darlie Key this, in my opinion, if I had been the judge presiding over that trial, I would have gladly, well, let's put it this way. I would have said this: you're the lead detective in the case. Your job is to investigate the case and then bring the facts above board to the world here. And if you're telling me that you are not going to share with the court and the jury and answer the questions that you've been asked,
Rich, I'm going to stop you right now. The judge is the one that suggested that. The judge is the one that suggested it. You're getting into a deeper area here of law. You might want to take a look at that. The judge suggested it because Jimmy Patterson only pled the fifth because he was being accused of a crime. And actually, the judge was a little bit chastising towards Doug Mulder. Matter of fact, let's check it out. Well, no, that's my next video. I'm going to use this clip. Rich, the judge suggested it. Sir.
Oath, you have that right to do that under the United States Constitution. But then I also have the right to throw this case out.
Absolutely. If you'd have been that judge, that's what you'd have done, huh? You wouldn't have known. You wouldn't have used that man's right that he was accused of a federal crime in open court. and the court proceeding had nothing to do with any charge on him. So it was the judge's duty to remind the defense that they're touching chartered water there, and to advise Jimmy Patterson of his right to not speak on anything, sir. That come from a dumbass like me. No, sir. The judge suggested it, and that's going to be my next video. We're not going to laugh at you. Now, when you say things like this about two little boys that are in the ground, Rich, when you say things like this, you deserve a little bit of embarrassment. That is ridiculous. I cannot believe this is where your mind is at on this. I would end that word now.
Because it was basically about the secret recording that they did at the cemetery at the Silly String and the birthday party. But let's not forget the ceremony that occurred prior to the Silly String incident. There was I've never seen the video of the first 2 hours prior to, but from what I understand that is on it, there's a lot of mourning, there's a lot of crying, there was a little bit of a church service that went on. There was all of the things that you would think would happen at such a get-together.
Yeah, because at that graveside video, those are all the things you would think wouldn't happen. You wouldn't think that you'd see a mother and a father smiling and laughing and chewing gum, putting their hands down on people, spraying Silly String, and have an interview that looked like they were enjoying their 5 minutes of fame. They didn't say anything about an intruder, and this is what happened, this is what he looked like. I don't think I would want to talk to, if that, I might for a second, but I don't think I'd want a microphone in my face. I mean, that's just me. I can't stand next to the graves of my two kids and think that gossip is the worst evil in the world. She looked like she was having her 5 minutes of fame, and Darren was smiling like he was, he was smiling like he was getting a Hummer from a hoop to hoop. That was weird.
So soon after the murders. And then at the Silly String birthday party, first of all, everybody mourns differently. Everybody does things differently. I must admit, I'm not sure that I would have been able to do that. But I do believe that they did that out of love that they had for their sons. I do believe that. I do believe that's why that birthday party was held there. It's obvious. I mean, they had gifts there. They had cards there. They had balloons there.
Later on in episode 20, you state that Darren actually accused Beja. Beja was there at that birthday party. When did this happen that Darren actually accused Beja? And if he felt that strongly, why would he stand to watch her taking care of his other child while they were spraying Silly String on his two sons?
That said happy birthday. They sang happy birthday. And I do seem to recall, first of all, Darlie was spraying the Silly String around at the time she was so-called laughing. I don't know that she was necessarily laughing, but she was definitely smiling and stuff. Well, that's interesting to do that stuff, Everything going on, it was probably a little bit of a break from everything that was going on.
How do you have a break from your two sons' murders while you're standing next to their grave?
So, again, I'm not sure that I could have done something like that, but it doesn't, just because she did does not mean in any way that she murdered those children. And, I have a feeling that was a very good part of what put the final nails in Darlie's coffin at the trial, was that Silly String video. And you got to remember, Darlie Lynn didn't even bring the Silly String there.
No.
Darlie's sister Dana and her boyfriend at the time.
Somebody else, right? She didn't even bring it. And Dana grabbed Darlie's hand and she stuck that silly string in her hand. She had put some Gorilla Glue on it. And she stuck her finger on there and she said, "Bitch, you spray this, right?" Darlie sprayed it, dude. I probably would have been like, "What the fuck have we got to party about? Get shit out of here."
And was the one that brought the silly string there to the happy birthday party. So that wasn't even Darlie's idea. So let's point that out as well. Elvin, you said, why condemn her if she didn't do it? I'm not sure what you're saying. Who am I? I'm condemning Darlie? Can you be more specific with what you're saying? What's that?
He's referring to the jury.
Oh, okay. Are you referring to the jury or are you referring to me? Anyway, if you're referring to the jury, well, they condemned her. First of all, you have to remember that Greg Davis and Toby Shook. I do not know Toby Shook, but I do know Greg Davis, and they're both elaborate, incredible speakers. I mean, they, quite frankly, they could probably talk the Virgin Mary into posing for a centerfold. I mean, they're
not without any facts. How can they do that? They can't do that without facts. These people are that good that they can convince anybody. If the Virgin Mary doesn't want to go topless, she ain't going to go topless. And I'm pretty sure nobody wants to see that because she's probably like 2,024 years old.
They're really that dynamic. They're really, really good speakers. So you had that. I do not believe that Doug Mulder did a very good job with the defense. That's another subject for another time. Our time's running short here, but we'll definitely get to that sometime. I mean, Doug Mulder at the time was one of the most reputable criminal attorneys in the Dallas area in 1996. And his work on the case, in my opinion, was horrible. So you have to remember, though, Alvin, initially, there were 4 jurors that were going to acquit Darlie at first.
That's true.
And then after more deliberations and watching the silly string video, I believe 8 or 9 times, it pretty much sealed her doom, sad to say. And the manipulation of quite a bit of the blood evidence and
there was no manipulation of the blood evidence, but I will tell you this about the silly string. Darlie claimed that she was so scared she didn't go outside by herself. She wouldn't even go to the bathroom by herself, is what was told. But she didn't ask for any police protection at that gravesite, and she wasn't looking around behind her at all. She was happy.
And things of that nature, which is, in my opinion, rather erroneous. And you say, then, yes, why accuse her then? Well, first of all, I can understand why initially they may have not wanted to see or look much further, because there was low amounts of evidence of an intruder coming into that house, other than what Darlie had said. And, of course, you had to cut screen, things of that nature. Their voluntary statements were strange, in my opinion. I think they were a little bit rehearsed.
If their statements were rehearsed, who wrote their script? Rehearsed for what? What would be the point of rehearsing their statements? What would be the point of a police officer or somebody in law enforcement to pressure them to write what they wrote?
To go in there and do it, but I think anybody under
not going into it
those circumstances would do something like that. I mean, let's face it. You're running a risk of a murder 1 charge, You're going to do, even if you're innocent, you're still going to be nervous about making a mistake. Although,
whoa, if you're innocent, you can't make a mistake. If you're innocent, you cannot make a mistake.
Darlie claimed that Darlie Lynn claimed that she didn't even realize that she was a suspect until they arrested her. But but they didn't really look that deep into the case either, Alvin. They really didn't look that deep into the case initially.
Well, you just said that she would be scared of writing out, getting accused of murder. But you just said she didn't even know she was a suspect until she got arrested. So that means she wasn't thinking that she was going to get arrested, which would mean that the police were doing nothing to scare her. Rich. I'm embarrassed to do this reaction, sir.
In my opinion. Now, you had James Cron come in there, and within 20 or 30 minutes, he said he already knew it was an inside job. And this was, things weren't even done yet. Even stuff with the forensics weren't even done yet.
No, the forensic, that was his, that wasn't his, it was his opinion. It wasn't, this is an inside job. He said, in my opinion, this indicates that this was an inside job. And to this day, you can't name a person that did it.
So they kind of made their mind up from the get-go. You have to remember, in Rowlett, Texas, at that time, and even still today, you don't hear of murders like this. They, not only do I think they were not equipped for it, but I don't think they had the experience for it.
They drew in the FBI. They drew in CSI official Max Courtney. They drew in James Cron with 4,000 bodies behind him, 4,000 scenes with bodies, 23,000 scenes, and 40-odd years of experience.
And you have to remember, any police officer, any detective is going to go through a certain amount of training in order to obtain their position. I get it. But it's a whole lot different when you're seeing it and when you're actually doing it than what you learn in school.
How many crime scenes have you been on? How many have you worked? Because you said, I'm telling you, it's a whole lot different when you're seeing it. That would lead me to believe that you've seen it.
What you learn during training. And you still have, fingerprint J85 that's unidentified.
It's the second time that you got that very important piece of evidence misclassified in its, what do they call that, tagging of evidence. Second time. World-class investigator trained you, sir. This is something you said, not me.
They claimed that it was probably Darlie's print. They claimed that it might have been one of the boys' prints. And, they even exhumed the boys in 2000. Unfortunately.
Who's this they?
When they exhumed the boys, the vault had flooded. And it was very hard, if not impossible, to obtain any fingerprints from the boys. I do know their hands were removed as a result, but
you can't even rest in peace, Rich. She got them both again with her lie. Going in there and cut their fucking hands off. If it helps.
Very unfortunate and very sad, to say the least. So, but I don't want to get too far on these tangents. I'm already going over on time. Alvin, I do thank you, though, for coming in here and sharing this evening. I'm very, very glad you did that. I hope to see you back again next Saturday. I'd love to talk with you more about things, and anybody else that wants to talk about things that had occurred with this case, and we will discuss it for the entire hour, and we'll dig deep on it, and we'll see what we can come up with it. Until then, everybody, have a great evening and a great week, and I will see you next Saturday.
Holy shit. Okay, let's see. Let's see how. Let's do this. What show is that behind you? That is the Crime Integrity Unit of Dallas. It's Craig Watkins. He started the Crime Integrity Unit there in Dallas, but it's investigation ID. Let me see here. See how that looks on there? Can we see that? Is that beautiful or what? Let me get my fat head out of the screen. And I'll read this along here and then I'll highlight it when it comes to the part of the testimony I'm talking about. La-di-da, la-di-da. You're talking about Karen Neal. Man, he's talking a whole hell of a lot. A whole hell of a lot about the case in the first part of his testimony here. Voluntary statement, right? Yeah. Talking about the voluntary statement that Darlie gave. Her statement is exhibit number 76 in this trial. Okay, let me see here. Here we go. This is Mr. Douglas Moner trying to cast some light and try and get this thrown out on a mistrial. Hopefully, just a shenanigan in court by Mr. Douglas D. Moner. Remember, Rich said that if he was the judge, he would tell him, no, you're going to answer these questions. And who do you think you are? And I'll throw this case out. If he was the judge. Question, but you were telling this jury, you folks put microphones at the gravesite to monitor conversations of people who had gone there to pray and to mourn and grieve at the passing of these two children. Yes, sir. And recorded all that. Yes, sir. And when these were hidden so that the people couldn't find them. I mean, it was designed to be done superstitiously, was it not? So that they didn't see it. That's right. And you would record those private moments. Is that right? Yes, we did. Who all knew about this besides you? Detective Frosch. And who else? The two detectives that set it up. Okay, but you were a part of it. It was done not only with your knowledge, but at your insistence, wasn't it? I didn't insist on anyone to do it. But you all got together and thought it would be a good idea. Yes, sir. Okay. Okay. First he talked about it a little bit. He let it sink for a minute, and then he went on to another situation. He goes on about the Sergeant Neighbors report. Did the attorney's office know that you had surreptitiously planted microphones at that gravesite to monitor those private conversations? Could you tell me what that word means? Well, yeah, at least he's being honest. Surreptitiously. Yes, sir. Secretly. No, I don't remember. I don't think the DA's office knew about that. You didn't tell them? Do you know if that is a violation? Now, here it is. Here it is. You didn't tell them? Did you know that is a violation of a state law as well? Not that I remember. Okay, have you reviewed the report? Okay, first he accused him of a crime right here. He's just showing where he puts it at right here. Then he holds out for a minute. He moved on to something else. I want to get to this part about the right here. Patterson says, Officer Patterson, Mulder's asking him, Officer Patterson, I'm going to get into where we were when we left off in a minute, but just so that you and I are on the same wavelength, do you understand what federal law is as regards to monitoring private phone conversations? Phone conversations are a bit different. No, sir. Weren't you a narcotics officer? Didn't you work drugs? Yes, sir. Well, in that capacity, didn't you have the occasion to get wiretaps? Patterson said, well, if you're saying that I violated some law, then I'm not going to say anything else about that. Well, you're going to answer my questions. The court, that's the judge. He says, well, and then Mulder says, are you going to take the fifth? Is that what you're going to do? You're going to say? And if you're saying I violated some state or federal law, then I'm not going to answer it until I have legal counsel about that. Well, I suspect you better get legal counsel then, because I'm suggesting to you that that is exactly what you did. Davis speaks up. He says, object to him suggesting anything. The officer has already stated that he doesn't know. Sustained. Because he didn't know the law about the federal wiretapping. Judge, it doesn't make any difference to me whether you warn the man or not. The court knows the law, and it's a violation of state and federal law. I know the law, and Mr. Mulder, this is a federal felony. The judge says, Mr. Mulder, please, Officer Patterson is a law enforcement officer and is presumed to know the law in Texas. Yes, sir. I have advised him of his rights in this regard, and you do have a right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States not to say anything that might tend to incriminate you in any way. And you certainly understand all of that. Yes, sir. The judge. So you are an experienced law enforcement officer. You have warned a lot of other people with their rights. You do know what the Miranda warnings are, do you not? I do. Well then, if you know what the Miranda warnings are, I think that it speaks for yourself. You understand what you can do and can't do. Do you need any further counseling? Do you think? Any explanation of what your rights are under the law? The witness, no, sir. The court, okay, fine. I think we have covered that. So ask your questions. If he wants to answer it, he will. If he does not, he can then invoke the Fifth Amendment. Mulder. Yes, sir. Let me ask you something. Do you understand? Mulder says, do you understand more about it now than you did before the judge talked to you about the law? No one has read me any statute that I violated the law. Okay, would you like to have time to read both of those state laws and federal laws as regards to the surreptitious collection of conversations such as you and the other officers that you told us about before lunch recorded? I would like to read it, yes. Well, in that case, do you have another witness you can put on the stand? That's what the judge said. So he had the right to not speak about it. He had a right to study on the law if he wanted to speak about it, about wiretapping. Every American has a right to plead the fifth if they're accused of a crime or are questioned by an officer. The court, well then, in that case, do you have another witness you can put on the stand? Would the court let me go and do some other matters and let him read during blah, blah, blah? And Mulder's trying to push it. In all fairness to you, don't you think that it is appropriate that anything I ask you about that or any remarks you make about that be recorded? Do I think it's fair? Yeah, fair to you. Well, I don't understand what you're saying. But don't you think that in any... I'm not going to ask you to make any comments about that. You've had time to get a legal counsel. See, Mulder's trying to dig at him again with your lawyer about the state law, the federal law, but don't you think in fairness to you, if I question you about that our conversations ought to be recorded? Well, at this time, Patterson says, until I have legal counsel or until I read that, if I violated something, then I'm not going to answer you. Well, I guess I'm missing the point. But in fairness to you, so that your jury, if it comes down to that line, will know exactly what you said and what admissions you make or didn't make. Don't you think in fairness to the prospective defendant that those conversations should be recorded so that there is no question about what was said? He says, I don't understand what you said. And I don't either. Well, all right, let me put it another way. Maybe I can make it a little more artful. I guess the bottom line is this. If I am going to question you about criminal conduct, don't you think in fairness to the person questioned, and don't you think in fairness to the person questioned, and then I tell you that I'm going to use that, whatever you say on down the line against you, or I have absolutely no idea what this man means. Don't you think that in fairness to the person questioned that your answers ought to be recorded so that there's no question to be what was said? Yeah, I understand what you're saying. He's tried again. Suppose you were going to question me about a traffic violation for speeding from here to San Antonio or something. Well, let's make it something more serious than that. But you're going to question me. Do you think in fairness to me that whatever I say should be recorded, that on down the line, a week from now, 2 weeks from now, or a month from now, if you intend to use that against me, that there would be an accurate rendition of what I said? Well, until I get legal counsel, I'm not going to answer you. All right. So he keeps badgering him about that, and finally the court says, Mr. Mulder, let's move on to some other area than what this is. Yes, sir. The judge did the right thing, Rich. He told him that he could take the fifth, and that's what he did. Yeah. Now, my Rich Prater said, well, if I was that judge, I would have threw that thing out. It was the judge that supported it, Rich. So there is your world-class investigating. Piece of chicken grease. World-class investigation of my ass, Rich. What the hell are you doing over there, boy? Shame on you. It's fucked up, man.